Ben's back with me. Hi, Ben.
Hello.
Thanks for coming
Can't get rid
back.
of me.
Yeah, thanks for not bailing during
Yeah.
during the pre-recorded segment. We're going to be talking about some research from Google. So this is the 6 key marketing trends that are changing the gaming industry. And we're going to go through them, 1 to 6, talk about them. So if you're interested in how to market games, this is definitely the segment for you. Um, how are you feeling, Ben? You good? You ready to talk about
I'm
this?
good.
Let's do
Yeah,
it.
let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So trend number 1, and this is all research I should mention that Google has been collecting in a variety of ways, looking at the industry as a whole, like qualitative data, also doing interviews and all sorts of things. So number 1 is growing adoption of digital distribution. Ben, do you want to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, very relevant. Bearing in mind in the news section, we were just talking about digital-only consoles, which obviously previously haven't really existed if you go not in the too distant past. So, I think it comes very much from I mean, it's easy to get it out. You can get the production costs down a bit because you're not having to create the discs and the boxes and the packaging and the shipping, and you've got out some of the middleman really. So it can make life a bit easier. And I think it also kind of feeds into the way we as consumers are wanting to behave now. Like long gone are the days of, you know, not having what you want when you want it. I think we're very much in an immediacy culture now. It's we want instant gratification. Like obviously we mentioned how big some of these games are, so it's not quite instant with the download, but it can be a heck of a lot quicker than, ordering something online, waiting for it to come, or God forbid, getting in your car and actually going out into the world to buy something
Actually having
in
to
in a
see another
shop.
human being.
Yeah, actually leave the comfort of your home. I mean, and digital downloads lets you do that. You can go, I want that game. I'm going to buy it now. I'll have it as soon as it's downloaded.
Yeah.
It's it just for a consumer that for me that's much better. I'm very much an instant gratification consumer. If I see something,
Why
I
am I
want it.
not
The wait
surprised?
time, yeah, you know, we've been spoiled by one day delivery, same day delivery. Get it now. If I have to wait a week for something, then you know you're probably
Yeah,
over it by the time it arrives.
yeah,
So
you don't even
I
want it
think that
anymore. Send it back.
yeah, yeah. So I think it's very much a combination of the two things. I think from a production point of view, it makes sense now that we have the capabilities to do it well. So I think it's in some instances is the best it possibly can be. I'm sure over the years we'll see it get better and better and better. And from a consumer point of view, that's just what we want now. It's kind of it's what we've come to expect. So
Mm.
I think
Yeah, I think just from
you
like
agree.
from a technology point of view, like faster internet speeds, like everyone's internet's consistently getting faster. We got 5G coming soon, and I think you kind of touched on it there. Like consumer attitudes, just the way that we consume other media has changed. Like you think about the difference between the days of Blockbuster versus Netflix now, or the days of
Exactly.
HMV versus Spotify now. Like culturally, we've become accustomed to these kind of delivery mechanisms, and yeah, and Game Pass ties into that, but also a variety of services across the games industry, and yeah, just digital storefronts across the board, Steam. So yeah, really interesting and definitely a critical part of any kind of launch strategy now. Like you can't. In the old days, you just have a deal with a publisher and you'd be like, okay, they're going to put it in stores on this date. Better be done by then. But the industry has changed a lot since then. You actually have to have a plan for your digital rollout, the storefronts you're going to be on, how you're going to present yourself on those storefronts,
Hmm.
right through to production. Like day one patches and stuff. It really impacts everything.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with pricing as well, because you see a lot of the like digital downloads. You know, you would think it would cost less because there's no packaging or transport involved, but they cost a little bit more. So it would be interesting to see whether that changes in the future. I would say at some point maybe physical discs just will stop being a thing. People won't buy them anymore. But the other side of the coin as well is if you're doing it digitally and you're selling through some of the stores. So if you're selling it through the Xbox store, the Microsoft store, the PlayStation store, you know they're going to want to take a cut of that. And if it's digital only, you're kind of at the mercy of the store that you want to sell through. With physical retailers, you can pick your retailers, and there's a lot more of them. So you can get a better price. And you know, as bad as people think Epic is for the PC world, like that was, pretty good because all of a sudden Steam had a
Competition.
competitor, and then there's then you can get into a price war, and you're in a stronger negotiating position where, if you have to go to the Microsoft store and you have to go to the PlayStation store, there's not a lot of competition there. It's if you want to be on our console and sell through our store, you're at the mercy of what we charge. Now, I'm not privy to the exactly what the costs are, but that's one thing to consider. So that is the other side of the digital only coin.
We won't get into it now, but that's exactly the fight that Epic and Apple are having about Fortnite.
Yeah.
So number 2, and similar actually, kind of related to that, evolving business models. So what Google means by that is the way that revenue for games is changing, shifting away from you pay £40 or £50 or £60 even for a game in a box, then you get it and you have it and that's it, to more of a recurring revenue, like free-to-play models, talking about things like loot boxes, love them or hate them, and also just subscriptions, battle passes, all that kind of thing. I mean it's been a big thing for a few years now, and it seems to only be increasing. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, it's funny. Shameless plug. I actually wrote an article that touched on this a little bit in the other month about we're starting to see a trend towards studios and publishers trying to get more lifelong games rather than new title every year, and that generates your revenue. Your revenue is coming from a game that someone's playing for a long period of time. Now, obviously, if that's your aim, you need some form of getting some extra revenue in. So, obviously, you can do that through DLC, where you have to purchase to get more of the game. So you can buy the game up front, and then you can buy extra, or some of the free-to-play models, or like the freemium models, is where you go in and the game is free, but then you have the expansions and the DLC and the loot boxes, and that's how you generate revenue. But with the lifelong games as well, if you're constantly adding to it, even if you're not necessarily charging for that DLC, so there's games that do that, like we know No Man's Sky does that, Rocket League does that. There are charges in Rocket League, but they do release updates to the game that you don't have to pay for. And that encourages more people to buy the game later, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a big hit. Like my game is coming out in September 2020, and I'm going to get all my sales now, and it'll peter off, and then that'll be really it. You can see strong sales throughout if you keep adding to the game. So that's really where we're seeing the industry move to, I think, with the lifelong games. There's, the stats like Paradox put out in their annual report at the end of last year that like 80% of their revenue came from titles that had released in a previous year. So there's massive legs in it, and I think we're only going to see the industry go more and more that way because, one of the things that this industry, is always a talking point is the hours that people work. And when you're trying to churn out games quickly, like lots of titles and hit deadlines to get games out, then obviously that makes that worse. Whereas if you have one title you're focusing on and you're improving it, I'm not saying that's easier or it reduces the workload, but it makes it a little bit more manageable and a little bit easier to go through, rather than we've got to get 3 titles out this year. Everyone's crunching to get it done. So I definitely think we're going to see the shift continue to go that way. I don't think it's going to start coming back the other way anymore.
Okay, number 3, the rise of gaming as a social forum, and this is something we've really seen been exaggerated by COVID-19 lockdown measures, but it was happening before, so it feels like it's just someone's just pressed the nitrous button on this. So virtual spaces, these online environments that players inhabit have become almost a refuge for a lot of people during difficult times, and they're being seen more as platforms for social engagement rather than just like a game to play. And the key example of this, not to bring up again, is Fortnite, obviously. So we've seen concerts in Fortnite, such as the Travis Scott concert, which have been incredibly successful. Like Fortnite very much feels like it's gone all in on this concept. It's not even really a game anymore. I mean, it is a game, but it's also a platform that serves a variety of experiences throughout the year. Do you have anything to add to the social aspect?
I think actually, as you say, Fortnite and with with the concerts and everything, and the production value on those were insane. Like it was such high quality. But I think someone who's been a real powerhouse in this through the pandemic period is Animal Crossing. I mean, we've seen all sorts going on in Animal Crossing, from family gatherings, gender reveal parties. People have been having work meetings in there, so it's they've been really strong throughout. In kind of, it's not what the game was set up to do, but it has that facility and people are using it, which is kind of what is so great about games, is that you can, if the facility is there, you can use your imagination to use it how you want, which I think the pandemic has obviously brought that out in people a lot. So I think, yeah, it's funny when we look at this and goes, a key trend is like, yeah, gaming is a social forum. It's a really social activity. And when you just sit and think about that just for a second, it's kind of like, yeah, that's what gaming is. Like, yes, you have single player games, but typically when you think of playing something, I think a lot of time playing a game, playing with someone, it's an incredibly social activity. So it is slightly funny to me that this is a trend that, oh, gaming is social, because yeah, no duh, it is a very social hobby to have, but it's interesting that it's now picking up speed and people are starting to use it socially differently. I think that's maybe what they're getting at with the trend.
Yeah, I think what they're saying is, yeah, from like a marketing perspective, like maybe you wouldn't have marketed a game in that way before, but you would start to market it that way now, and to encourage that kind of community.
Yeah, I think as well. I think if we're going to look at it from that perspective as well, the marketing, which obviously what we're doing is, I think that comes in very much kind of relating slightly to the point I don't know why I pointed up as if we were just discussing it up there. The previous point we were just talking about is, like, it doesn't feel like when we're talking about like the concerts and people having work meetings, family gatherings, that's very much, to me, feeding into the long life element again and extending the life of the game. Doesn't feel like a launch thing. Animal Crossing, we would never have launched the game being like, and you can have your work meetings in here, and that's just not the way it would have gone. But once the game's out and you can see people are going out, then it becomes a really strong marketing hook as, look at what you can do in this game as well as having fun. So I think that's very much where it sits in. Something like the Fortnite with the concerts, where it is more of turning into an experience game rather than the game, then maybe you might lean to that in the launch. But I think, yeah, this very much fits into the game's out. This is where I'm trying to get new people in, get the old players back into it. So that's how I think that is really going to fit into the marketing side of things. I don't know if you agree or disagree.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's a good point. Really ties together. Speaking of things that tie into that, and I think this is something we've talked about recently, so maybe we don't need to spend too much time on it. Popularity of content creators and live streaming. I mean, you're watching a stream right now. You at home, you're watching us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. But streaming has become, I mean, it already was a huge aspect of gaming and the way that content's consumed by gamers and game fans. That growth is just accelerating, and it's getting its day in the sun. It's becoming more and more mainstream to stream or to watch streams. And yeah, so some stats here from Google. 50% of gamers watch gaming streams, and that number goes up to 75% if you're looking at the younger age group, so people who are growing up with games now. Streaming is just native to them. It's just part of the gaming experience, which is definitely something that we have talked about a lot at Etch Play.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as you said, it's becoming native. They're going to age myself. I'm not that old, but the kids of today, they're not.
Do you have VHS or Betamax?
Growing up watching. Yeah, VHS. Betamax was a better product. It just wasn't marketed as well. So marketing wins, which is why we're talking about it. But the kids of today, they're not growing up watching terrestrial TV and things like that. What they're watching is video game streaming. Like, video games is starting to take over, and I think we've said about this before. Like, video games aren't competing with other video games; they're competing with the likes of Netflix and other hobbies. And you could say that about everything. Everything is competing with everything now. We're competing for time and not competing against products. So, but with streaming, yeah, I mean, it's huge. As you said, it was growing and growing and growing, and then don't want to keep harping on about it, but it's relevant. And the pandemic we're currently in has happened, and naturally it's skyrocketed because people aren't going out, people are staying in playing, so people are streaming more, so people are looking to watch more because they've got more time on their hands, and it's rocketed. And again, with the shameless plug, if you didn't check out the Etch business briefing last week, we took over it, and there's a blog on there about using Twitch to marketing, which touches on using streamers. So if you didn't see that, check it out. I promise this show is not just a plug for my blog post, even though I'm turning it into that.
Plugging all his blog posts. I put those links in the chat for you. Gamalam in the chat actually says, I never thought I'd be happy to sit and watch other people play games. Look at you now, Ben Gammon, watching us live.
Yeah, you're watching people talk about people watching play games.
Yeah, you're an extra level removed.
Getting messy, mate. Getting messy.
What a sad life you have. I'm joking. Thanks for watching. We love our
Please
audience.
stay with us.
Yeah, please don't turn off. Don't touch that dial. Number 5 is data. Data and customer insights. So this is kind of related to that digital delivery. It's basically as a result of the increasing reliance on digital delivery methods. Kind of anticipating and expecting and starting to see that you get kind of more closed loop marketing strategies. You can get more analytics out of that. You can, really chart a player's path to purchase and also path beyond purchase, what they do in the game and their kind of journey as a whole. This really ties into our kind of proposition and what we do with our partners, studios and publishers is think about the extended experience. So every player touch point matters and the experience is everything. So the increasing reliance on digital only makes that easier because you can have more of a joined up picture than we could ever get before.
Yeah, I mean, data is king, said every marketer in 2020 ever, but it's true. it sounds a cliche, but it is true. I mean, when we're looking at doing marketing for games with our marketing guys, it's we start with the data. We take a very much we will be led by the data. It's great to have assumptions and gut feels are not to be discounted, but it's so valuable to be led by the data. And as you said, now we're starting to get these closed loops with the digital delivery, and we understand now better than ever what people are doing, so we can use that to market them, to give them more of what we know that they like. So it's so incredibly important to have that data and to not ignore that data. But I think what people need to be wary of is when we start looking at data and we start looking at insights, is it's very easy to just collect numbers, and it can become very overwhelming very, very quickly. You almost need to know what you're looking for. You can't go in going, I want to necessarily prove this, and be blind yourself to actually just almost like confirmation bias, like, oh, I know this and I'm going to find what I need to prove it. But you also need to kind of be looking at what is the important stuff. So collect the data and like, what is the important stuff? Rather than trying to cover everything, find where the data that's going to help you is, and leverage that. If you try and leverage every piece of data that you get out of the game, you'll never do anything, because there is so much you can get out. You kind of need to really have a strategy and a plan for how you want to use data, rather than going down, oh, data is important, let's collect a load of data, now what? So it's incredibly accessible now with the digital delivery, and everything's just getting smarter and easier to collect. But that doesn't mean it's easy to do something with. So I would just take your time, think about it, and not necessarily rush it. It's difficult. It is difficult. So, but the possibilities are huge, and people don't necessarily always like their data being taken, and obviously you've got to do it ethically and don't take data for the sake of. But when your data is collected, it makes your experience better. There are people who will take data in other industries, not the gaming industry, and exploit it. But a lot of the time when people are collecting data, it's to try and make the experience better. Obviously, there's monetary value for a business to do that, but ultimately, as a consumer, if you take that out of and go, well, my experience is going to get better from this data being collected, you're going to get a better experience. So,
okay.
I don't know whether there was a point in there, or.
I'll just let you talk.
Hopefully there was.
You can have the show if you want. I'll clock off in a minute. You can just keep going.
Yeah.
Number 6 then, and this kind of ties back into some of the Xbox Series S news that we had at the top of the show, and news about Game Pass Ultimate. Google's identified, and I think this ties in with what a lot of people are seeing, thinking, and expecting now out of the years to come, that cloud delivery is the next big disruptor. And we probably should caveat this. Google do have a platform for cloud delivery. They did invent Google Stadia. That is a thing they owned. They maybe have a vested interest in saying that this is the future of games. But it does seem...
this was supposed to be a 5-point list, and someone at Google's like, just slide that on.
Yeah, put Stadia on the end there. But we are seeing, it's not just Stadia. There are a variety of services that offer some form of streaming. Sony has PlayStation Now, which is not quite the same, but offers some streaming options for certain games. Nvidia are in this game, and as we know, Microsoft are wading into this arena heavily armed with Game Pass Ultimate, adding xCloud streaming for free to Game Pass Ultimate subscribers this month, I think. It might even be out now, or today, or sometime soon. And then, obviously, by the time the Series X and S launches, that'll just be a thing by then. Cloud delivery. So not having to download the games or own them necessarily, just streaming them from a remote server.
Yeah, I think it feeds back to what we were talking about very, very early on in this chat. It's the way as consumers we are expecting to be given content now. I hate when you hear it when it's like, we're going to be the Netflix of insert industry, which I think speaks to how powerful the Netflix system is, that everyone wants to replicate it. And it kind of makes sense for gaming to go down that route now. The technology is getting there to make it possible, because as we said, what's great about digital delivery is you get it there and then, but you've got the download time, and then you also need the storage time, which we were talking about with the Xbox storage earlier on in the show. But that's how people want to be given content. They want to have it immediately, and cloud streaming gives you that. You get rid of the download time. If you have a subscription model, you have access to so many different things. You don't tie yourself to necessarily buying I've paid 60 quid for a game, so now I'm going to have to play it to death because I've invested in it. You can maybe pay £10 a month and you have access to 100 games, and you can pick and choose what you play. It's what we're becoming accustomed to. So it makes logical sense for gaming to start moving that way, as we've said, as we are competing with the likes of Netflix and other hobbies. We need to get on that level with gaming, and it's great to see that it's moving that way and strides are being made. As you say, obviously Google has Stadia, which I think they actually came out at one point like, this isn't the Netflix of gaming, because I think that's what everyone expected it to be when it was announced, and it's not quite that. But then, as you said, you've got the PlayStation option, and Microsoft are coming in with their xCloud, which I shamefully called Project X earlier. Thank you. You corrected me, but didn't call me out.
You also just called Google Stadia Google Stadia, but we'll let that slide.
Oh, is that a faux pas? You're not allowed to say that. I'm going to say that's my accent.
Stadia? Is that?
Yeah, Stadia.
I mean, maybe people could write in the comments whether they pronounce it Stadia.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's Stadia.
I don't know.
There's no R in there.
I'm just a simple northern boy trying to get by.
That is true. So yeah, that brings us to the end of the 6 key marketing trends that are changing the gaming industry, and the end of the show. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it if you tuned in. If you liked the show, remember to subscribe. Come back next Thursday, because it is on every 4 PM, at least till we get shut down. No one's told us no yet, so we'll still be here. Dan will be back next week, hopefully. Is he back next week? Someone will be here to talk through the news, and we'll have more gameplay, more insights right here on Etch Play's Twitch account. And we'll see you again soon. Bye.